Hola!
Hi.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Beyond the Screen. Let's get real.
For real.
For real.
For real.
For real, for real.
De
De veras. Thank you so much for joining us and for being here with us today. We are excited because we have Juan Barroso, who's a 3D sculptor, artist, like I don't even know how they want to identify because he works primarily in three-dimensional art, but is also an amazing like painter and
Drafts person.
yeah, he's ridiculous. So I'm excited for y'all to see his work, and he's joining us now. So let's give him a welcome.
There he is.
There he is.
Hello.
Hey, Juan.
Hola, Juan. How's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. Yeah, we're working on the garden a little bit earlier today, so we're excited to like take a little bit of a break and hear a little bit about you and your work. We're super excited. ¿Cómo estás? Good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. So, for those of you who don't know Juan's work, he's ridiculous. Let me show you a little bit of his work.
And so, mind you that these images are built up with little dots. And so just the I don't even know how to like explain it. All the labor that goes into like producing these images and the layering and the building up of value. Amazing.
Incredible work. We got to meet you, Juan, a few years ago when we reached out. I think it was via Instagram, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And we invited you to come exhibit at Comalito, and you've exhibited with us a few times now. And every single time your work is completely like sold every time. So folks love you and they love your work. So we're excited to be able to virtually share space with you since we're in a different time zone. Yeah, so let's get started. Welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Yes, thank you. And one of the questions that we actually have for you is, how do you identify with the label artist? Because I know we were struggling to like even put a label on what you call it yourself, if you're a ceramic artist, if you're a painter, and not that you have to be like a specific label, but I don't know how you would want us to refer to you.
Yeah, I don't really mind any of them, but I think on my Instagram I have painter and ceramic artist. So
Okay.
I use both, I suppose.
Nice. Like, did you start off painting first? Was your love?
Yeah.
Did you have a love
Yeah.
for painting before you had a love for like ceramics? Can
Well,
you talk a little bit?
I started drawing first, and then I tried oil paints in high school, and they dried too slow, and I made a mess. The carpet was stained. So I put painting aside for a while until undergrad, and that's when I picked it up again with an actual studio and in the space where it's actually dry. And so it was drawing, then painting, and then I tried painting on ceramics. I actually took the class by accident. I thought it'd be like painting with mosaics, tiny little like squares.
Vera style.
Yeah, and then I see pots everywhere, and it was really surprising. But then I saw Stuart really excited about pottery, and I decided to stay, and here I am.
Yes. And I mean, I can even like extend that it's going beyond ceramics now. Like the last installation that I saw images of on your Instagram for I believe it was your thesis.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a full-on installation. It's sculpture now. Like and I don't know if you label it that, but like it's growing as well, right?
Yeah, that was my first, what I would consider the first installation I have, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I guess I would consider it sculpture.
So that folks kind of know what it is that we're talking about. Do you mind sharing about that installation, like where it was, what it was about, how many water gallon jugs? Like, can you talk a little bit about the concept?
So, I in the gallery space, I try to split it up with a border wall made up of 263 water jugs, a number significant to the year 1998. According to the Department of Homeland Security, I believe, 263 immigrants died along the border on the U.S. side. And that same year, my dad had tried to, cross the border, but he got a ride with some guys in the truck. And on the way there, the heat of the sun, trying to cross the desert, caught on it made some gasoline containers catch on fire. And so the back of the truck started burning, and they jumped out. But the guys who were driving thought they had been lit on purpose. And so they got mad, and they started shooting at them. And so my dad had to walk, through the desert to get back home, and, only a few of them made it back. And so the year is pretty significant to me. So I was trying to honor that journey, which is pretty dangerous. And it's also very personal that year for my family.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Juan. I knew the significance of like the number of jugs in relation to the year, but I hadn't known the story that you had, or the connection it had to your family's narrative. So thank you for sharing that. I would say the majority of the work that you do, Juan, is based in like socio-political work. And now I know that there's a personal narrative that's attached to some of that political work. And a lot of it is focused on like the migrant experience. And I was gonna ask, why choose to go the socio-political yet functional pottery route versus primarily decorative? And it sounds like maybe your family story has something to do with it, or
Yeah.
why?
I think I can answer that in maybe two parts, I suppose. The first one, I guess, would be why the political aspect to it. Yeah, so before my parents became legal residents, I was pretty scared they would be deported. I was, growing up here in the U.S., I always thought that we were, one speeding ticket away from my parents being taken away from me. And so after they became, legal residents, I wasn't afraid to make work about Mexican culture anymore. And with immigration policies that dehumanize the immigrants, even Donald Trump asking for people to use the word alien instead of undocumented immigrants, it makes me mad. It hurts quite a bit. And so I feel like my work is a response to those things that upset me, as a way to cope, but also to maybe make work for people who don't really have a voice in that. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
And the other part of it about why ceramics, that also had to do with my dad, I suppose. When he was a kid, he went to like a school run by nuns who were Catholic, and he was left-handed. They would tie his hand behind his back, said it was the hand of the devil. He was some kind of devil child for using his left hand. And so he'd be, trying to make homework and do homework and pass his test with his right hand. And so, of course, he pretty much failed out. They would make him feel bad for having like dirty clothes from working in the fields. So they just made him feel like he was kind of worthless and just dirty. And then so growing up with him, making fences and digging those post holes, we would get mud on ourselves. And I realized that he had maybe changed that, I guess, dirt or clay into something more positive. He considered it a sign of his work, and he was proud of the things he did. And so to take something that is so mundane and a humble material like clay and make something positive or beautiful out of it, like some of the ceramic pieces that I paint, or his fences, for example, I think is ironic, but also it makes me happy. That flipping of the negative to the positive thing.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yes. Stop. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for being so open and for sharing that también, Juan. I'm just kind of like, I thought I was pretty familiar with your work, and I'm realizing in this last 10 minutes that there's so much more to your work. I read something today about your work as well, specifically about the pointillism, the stippling, which is the dots that create density and value in your work. Like, that you in your artist statement, you share the reason for why you do or use pointillism on ceramics, and how exhausting that method of creation is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And why you chose stippling specifically?
Maybe the way to talk about that would be To start with, when people ask me why I use dots instead of transfers, like a decal, right? And the answer for that is I went on this bike pilgrimage to see the Virgen of Guadalupe with my dad once. And, after maybe on the second day, 30 miles in, I gave up. I let the truck that gets in the back, that picks up the people that stay behind. And I gave up, and overall the trip showed me, I think, the devotion people have. And for the rest of the trip, I tried to do what I could to keep going. And when I couldn't ride the bike, I'd get off and run with it. So yeah, I think it showed me the will of the people and the devotion to their, to God and the Virgen Guadalupe. And it's about the journey, not really getting there. It would be like asking them, like, why don't you just take a truck and get there in 3 hours instead of 3 days, 60 miles a day? And so that's the same answer I have, I suppose, that it's about the process itself to show devotion, just like the bike pilgrimage.
Wow.
And if I can add something else, like, I also feel that when work is process oriented, that there's also a strong significance to the artist as a way to process information and as a way to cope possibly with whatever is at hand that you're working with. And speaking personally from my process, I feel like process for me allows for me to carve in some space and time to think things through, and those decisions come out in the work somehow. For you, it's imagery. You're building up these images out of these little dots for people, a dot could be insignificant, but yet the way that these dots are accumulated, they're building up to these beautiful images that have such a huge impact, whether it's a child in a cage, or whether it's a hand holding onto a fence. And the pieces most of the pieces don't have text in your work, but I feel like there is that open-endedness to allow for folks to somehow engage with that image and how it relates to them. And for me personally, I come from a migrant family, so I can definitely see those parallels in terms of labor, in terms of the immigrant experience. So I absolutely fell in love with your work when I saw it, and I absolutely found that connection that that this process that not a lot of people probably know about, that through time you get to, at the end, receive this beautiful production of something, which at the end or in the beginning, it's you're really trying to solve something in your mind in terms of trauma or an idea, right? So I mean, for a viewer on my end, I get to see this beautiful glazed piece with a beautiful image, but the like you're saying, the journey is the political issues, right? The stories, the narratives. So.
Yeah, and I think for me, Juan, something that stuck out for me in regards to the dots and the pointillism was that you said in your statement that there's no way but to honor the migrant experience than like this backbreaking work, or this like that your neck hurts at the end of a piece, and that your back hurts at the end of the piece, and that your hands hurt at the end of the piece, and that like that parallels kind of like that experience, right?
Yeah, it's a very cathartic experience, and it's I that's the way I choose to show, I guess, my love for my people and the work they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
Did you grow up in a creative family, Juan? And like, or where does this come from?
So quite a few of the men on my mom's side of the family are musicians, and they can sing, they can play the guitar mostly.
Nice.
And then I heard that my grandma used to draw trees and birds with whatever material she could find. And my mom, sews, knits, cross stitches. She can do quite a few things as well. I think this week she's making little dresses for saleros, like for a wedding. And then my sister, she learned how to embroider recently. She can paint, but I guess it's more like a hobby for her, like maybe every few months or so. So yeah, I would say my family was pretty creative, and from the beginning, they were really supportive of it.
Nice. That's beautiful. That was going to be my next question because often, you hear about families of color, Latinx parents, Mexican parents, um, um, often not being supportive of the journey to like art school or a creative journey because you often hear this narrative that they gave up everything to come to this country and you're going to choose to do something that doesn't pay money, and that's often a narrative that is heard with young folks who are pursuing the arts, and it sounds like your family was the opposite. They were very supportive. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, at first they were a little nervous. I remember I remember at first with my dad, and during the lunch break, I was sitting down drawing with a piece of like a rock on the concrete. A certain rock makes like a white mark, so I was using it as like a drawing the highlights, I guess. He's asking me what I'm gonna do, how I'm gonna make a living, and told him, if I ended up homeless or something, I would at least be able to draw with the rocks. I find a way, if I couldn't afford materials. And I think that kind of helped them see that I was really determined to pursue this, even if I may making no money. It wasn't about the money. I think I just wanted to keep making work, I suppose. Find different ways to do work, I suppose. And then after I got to grad school, everyone was really supportive, saying they were my biggest fans, and they're like, "We knew you could always do it," So I think the longer I was in this, the more supportive they became, and that certainly has helped out quite a bit.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Is there a piece or a body of work that your family, specifically maybe your parents, have been like, that's it, like that they are like attached to or that they like loved? I know as a parent they love everything you do, from your kindergarten doodles to like, but I mean, is there a body of work or a piece specifically that they were impacted by?
They like most of them, I think, equally. From my mom, there's one that she didn't let me throw away.
Throw away? I'm sorry. What?
So, I was cleaning out my studio and I had a chancla award made out of the clay. It was like a little trophy with a chancla, like an orange chancla on it from undergrad. And I wanted to throw that away, and she kept it. And I found it earlier, and she held on to that. She thought it was pretty funny. Never had to use one, but I remember my grandma once. My uncles were fighting over something. Then she just shows up out of nowhere and starts like hitting the both of them, and until they stopped, arguing with each other. It's a really funny memory for me. But yeah, I would say that's one of her favorite ones. And there's also the ones that she kept from my childhood. I have one actually here. I can show you guys.
Yes, do it. Let's do it. We need to talk to him about throwing away work. Like, we'll pay for shipping, Juan.
This was like maybe, I don't know if it was like first grade or something. With glue.
I'm sorry,
the outlines.
You said first grade?
Yeah, something like that. And there's this one, which was for third grade, back when I didn't know any English.
Oh wow.
The teacher, back then, when I didn't understand anyone, the kids were laughing, and I thought they were laughing at me, so I felt like I didn't belong. And it wasn't until art class when people actually started smiling and kind of telling me I was doing good, or a thumbs up or whatever. I guess I got validation during the art class in third grade. I remember that quite a bit. And since I didn't understand what the teacher wanted, I don't know if you saw like a stripe in the sky. She wanted me to blend the blues together. But instead of doing a gradient, I didn't understand that. I just started, maybe I filled it with like 6 different blues, and there were stripes everywhere. And then I kind of blended it, but left just 2, and just the line got blended. I tried to understand. So that's what it reminds me of. So I've kept that one. That like maybe gap between, because of the language gap, and just trying to figure it out.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I can relate. I also come from a migrant family, and my family moved back and forth from the time that I was born to the time that I was in 6th grade. And I was English as a second language ESL student, and so I can empathize when you talk about like the arts being, for me it was the arts specifically visual arts as well as poetry, because in visual arts, again, it was about creativity, and in poetry, like, grammar didn't matter. And as someone who was really awful at it because of the learning gap, I thrived in poetry because grammar didn't matter. So I can relate in that sense. But another thing, Juan, is, if you need to clean out your studio, we will pay for shipping. Just call us and be like, this is going in the trash. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing those stories. Those are beautiful. Yeah, that was nice.
You're like, what are you gonna send a U-Haul or something?
Yeah, I'm still stuck on I'm throwing away work. And that you were that talented at first grade. Like, I don't know that I can even paint that now. The flowers in the vase. So,
and since you're talking about your academic experience, how was your experience with the arts, whether it's in undergrad or in graduate school, being a person of color, in the arts specifically, and ceramics even more? Like, what's your experience with that?
Well, I think maybe the best answer for that is, before my parents became legal residents, I was scared to make work about my culture and, I guess, what I wanted to do. So I was painting cats and boats and roses and the actors from Lord of the Rings, I think. Yeah, I didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until Stuart, my ceramics teacher from undergrad, I kind of told him about my situation. I was trying to help my parents out, and how I was kind of scared to make work about that sort of thing. And it was thanks to him that I actually started making work about Mexican culture and Mexican labor. Before that, I was too scared. I didn't want to stand out. So up until then, it was mostly about blending in and just trying to not bring attention to my parents.
And when you, thank you for sharing that too, Juan. When you finally did start sharing some of, your parents' experience, your experience, and just highlighting the Mexican migrant experience, did you find in your program that your programs, both undergrad as well as your graduate program, that it was well received? Yeah, it was well received. Yeah. Okay, beautiful. That's amazing.
They were all very supportive. I got very lucky. I thought maybe it wouldn't be. I think that was just my own fear about maybe being too different or something. But it was accepted, and so far it has been as well. I always, I post something, even the political stuff, thinking that people will comment back rude things or something. But so far, everyone's really nice about it. And yeah, I've been lucky to have a lot of support from the clay community and my teachers as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of us don't share that same experience.
I got lucky, I think.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear that you did have that experience in academia, and just even on social media. We post something about Black Lives Matter or something about queer love, and then it's like we get the comments even on our end as Comalito, or we get the unfollows, or we get the repercussions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So hearing that you're not having that experience is gives me a little bit of hope in the world. So yeah, that's amazing, especially since yours is very in your face. It's not subtle in any way, which I personally really appreciate. So thank you for having the courage now to create work like that, because I know that one of the things that we hear is the lack of representation of Black and brown bodies within the arts, right? Within white cube spaces, gallery spaces, and even down to the community level. So I just appreciate how unapologetic and how direct your work is, because there's no misinterpreting the intention behind the work. And I think that's powerful.
And I mean, and even just taking it another step forward from that too, the medium that you're working with is so unconventional, right? And conventional in the sense of where you're putting your images on. You're working on ceramics, it's 3D, which is For me, it's super complicated. I'm like 2D, it's fine for me. Like, and so once you start like adding another dimension to the creation of work, like that just shows your brilliance and just how your perception of the world is the way that you're creating your work. It's in a three-dimensional form. It's an actual space. It's not an illusion. And at the same time, like how your images are built up too. So like your whole process talks about like what you're just talking to us about, right? Your experience. And for me, it's like it you can see it, and that's what I really really appreciate. It's your combination of like the 2D, the 3D, and now you're like doing installation. So I'm super excited to see like where your work is headed, and the next museum we're gonna see it at.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like that hybridity of the 2D and 3D as well. I think it represents, being bilingual and bicultural, painting images of a Mexican culture on porcelain, more European, clay body, I suppose. But I do enjoy that. It's like being Mexican American, I suppose.
What are there? I mean, I love that you work in three-dimensional form, but I also, just from a gallerist standpoint as well as an artist, like I understand that there are challenges with three-dimensional work, right? There's way more risk. How does that impacted like your ability to like apply to galleries maybe across the country, or to shows or open calls, like because shipping is more expensive because of weight, there is a higher risk because of fragility, like how has that impacted like your ability to either submit or to showcase? Yeah, sometimes shit falls apart. Someone's commenting, yeah, is like, what are the pros and cons to working three-dimensional? Like, have you experienced some of those risks? How's your shit fall apart?
Well, I've mostly shown ceramic pieces, and yeah, I've lost a few. Some of them don't make the glaze firing, and that's pretty sad after spending 30 to 60 hours on something.
Yeah.
So there's always that risk of losing them, and that's pretty scary. But I think the payoff is nice. Whenever it comes out, you have something permanent that'll last quite a bit longer than a painting or a drawing. And I think that's pretty exciting to me. I've shown more ceramic pieces than paintings, but the paintings I have shown have done pretty okay as well, fortunately. Yeah, also, I think maybe the cons to making pottery would be not having a kiln to fire it in at the moment. Like I bought a little test kiln, but it came a little broken, and green sparks started coming out of it.
Oh,
First firing I tried to do, so I still got to get that fixed. So at the moment, the equipment for it, I think, would be something I have to deal with at the moment. And so I've been having to do, I guess, 2D, but mostly weaving at the moment.
Weaving, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I've been making scarves.
let's see.
So I have this green one
Nice.
and brown one.
Oh,
It's like,
okay. So
mind-blowing.
what can't you do? What can't you do, Juan? Leave a little talent for the rest of us, sir.
I can't dance.
I can. That's awesome. How long does it take you to like weave a scarf? I'm not a weaver.
Oh, I'm starting it, so I'm pretty slow right now. I think it's like 3 days. One of them took like a week, but yeah, I'm sure people can do it way faster than that.
And now that we're talking about weaving, like I remember you were creating this huge, what is it called? Bolero?
Bolero? Yeah, I have that.
Bolero, yes. Like, I guess my question is,
Thank you.
do you just start creating these things and find the process along the way? Do you research this? Like, how, or do you just like go and do it?
Is YouTube your best friend?
Maybe to answer that, I'll use my dad as an example. Whenever he knows pretty much everything about construction, and when he doesn't, he has one shot to try and figure it out, which he doesn't talk about maybe, and then he does it the second time, and by the second time he has to like know it. He forces himself to understand it then. And so, for example, the weaving thing, I have a piece that I did at first to try and figure it out, and I did my best to get it down by the second try, if that makes any sense. And then I just don't show the first one at all. And so yeah, I don't know. I can pick up different things pretty okay, I suppose, and I like that. I wanted to be like a Mexican handyman, but for art, just like my dad. So that was the goal, I think, to do all sorts of stuff. I have like wood burning, and I have a lipstick painting over there somewhere.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I like to kind of play around with different mediums.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you don't play around with different mediums though, Juan. You master all the mediums.
Thank you.
You're like, take that off the list. Check.
Yeah.
Check. But you know what? I feel like when you start taking in all these like different ways of making, I feel that things kind of help each other or kind of like aid each other.
Yeah.
And so like I feel that maybe your accumulation of all these skills is accumulating to something. Is that right? Like, are you thinking of using all these things you're learning to make a big piece, or like a big statement piece that incorporates ceramic and weaving and drawing and painting?
I have a donkey that I made out of wood, thanks to my dad. Also, to answer the question about how my dad feels about becoming an artist, at first he wasn't very, he was a little worried, but now he's very supportive. He helps me out with these projects I need help with, like cutting some parts for this wooden donkey sculpture I have. I want to weave, that's why I learned to weave. I want to weave a little blanket for the donkey, and then put pots on it, like a little toy bought from a recent trip to Mexico. So I have to have like a larger version of it that I'm working on that will include, sculpture from wood, weaving, pottery, and then painting on the pots that the donkey's carrying. So yeah, that'd be, I think, the one that mixes a few more things together.
That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. Because we want to be respectful of your time too, Juan, as we start to wind down, is there anybody that has a question? Feel free to type it in. But what do you do when you're not creating? Since clearly, like, being a creative and creating takes a large chunk of your life. Do you like to go on hikes? Like, what do you like to do when you're not being a badass artist?
I do play video games sometimes, and then I just Netflix, I guess.
Netflix.
I like to watch shows when I can. Also, I've been getting into knitting, so I've been making scarves. That's the kind of pastime, I suppose, as well. But that's also a type of, it's also art. So I don't know. I don't think there's really much beyond making things, if that makes sense.
What system are you playing on?
Right now, I bought a Nintendo Switch.
Yes! Oh! Sorry, we love the Switch.
Yeah, it's pretty nice so far.
Nice. Smash Brothers?
No, not yet. I couldn't afford that one yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a Zelda one and Pokemon one, and then Mortal Kombat 11.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to connect. I'll have to get your Switch code.
Okay.
Cool. JCC Sculpture is asking, what kind of projects are in the works? Now that your thesis is over.
Okay, so I can answer both of those with a piece, I think. So right now I'm kind of doing a piece on, I guess, the quarantine. That's me wearing a mask and then hand sanitizer. On one side, I want to have what people were worried about at first, the whole toilet paper running out thing. And on the other side, even more serious things, which would include, the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And so I do want to have kind of what people are worried about at first, and then the really more serious things that are happening right now as well, including how kids are still in those detention centers.
Yes.
Well, and then how Trump is saying that the people who have been hurting them aren't really responsible for it because they're gonna grow up to be criminals if they stay or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been trying to kind of cope with what's happening. I'm trying to not get burnt out because of it. But I will make a piece about it, and I have another one where I just have the outline started for Breonna Taylor. On a piece by Ian Childers. They sent over to me for a collaboration a while ago, and I just didn't know what to paint on it yet. So I was thinking of putting different portraits along the side. I hope he doesn't mind that. So yeah, I'm trying to maybe get myself to make work about it again. I used to do that, you know. I look at what's kind of bothering me and make work about it, but recently it's been a bit too much. So I've been taking a slight break and trying to weave just to have a better like mental health about it.
Yes.
And I'll get back into it and make work about what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, so important. The mental health component is so important. I think that oftentimes that gets forgotten, and I know that we've talked about this in previous episodes where, often artists are made to seem like they're not allowed to complain because if they're creating art, they're having fun, right? Or if they're creating art, it's something that they love doing, so they have no right to complain. And the reality is that that's not true, right? Like creating is work and it's emotional labor and it takes a lot out of you, and that artists need to take care of themselves too, and take care of their mental health. So thank you for sharing that you're working on that and that you'll get back into creating some of these works that are emotionally heavy when you're ready, because yeah. So anyway, well, thank you so much, Juan, for joining us today, for sharing your stories and your knowledge. Thank you for working with us, not just today, but in the past. If y'all already don't follow Juan Barroso, you can follow Juan Barroso at Juan_Barroso_art. Did I get that right, Juan?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. The episode does get recorded, so folks, feel free to share that with folks. Thank you all for being here today. There's a lot going on in the world, so please take care of yourselves and your loved ones, whatever that looks like. Thank you again, Juan, for being here, and until next time.
Yes, take care.
Thank you.